Thanks, Laura. Well, I'm so glad to be joined by my guest today. And the reality is that violence is a norm that 5 out of 7 billion people in the world experience. And my guest today knows firsthand what it feels like to experience violence. George Canjanathoppil hails from South Asia and has a remarkable story of faith and courage, with a peculiar, and I'm using her own words to describe herself, a peculiar flair that has put her on a mission of social justice for the world's most vulnerable. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Anu.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mark.
It is awesome to have you. I've been hearing a lot of great things about you for a long time now, so I'm glad that we get the chance to meet in person and to chat. What were your experiences like? So you hail from South Asia. And I want to get a sense from you as to what it was like to grow up as a young South Asian girl in the Christian context, because your family were believers,
yeah.
And perhaps things that were unique to your part of the world for a young woman.
I would say, being a Christian in South Asia is kind of a wholesome experience. Because here in the West, when you say believe in one true God, you're literally looking around, there's just one context that I have to. But there you're looking at a very colorful myriad of cultures and traditions and millions of God figures that people are talking about. And then when you grow up in a household like that, the experience becomes wholesome, maybe on an altogether different level, richer, because you have to wade through the sea and actually experience life as a Christian to feel and embrace faith.
And you raise an interesting point. Because it is so diverse, there are so many expressions of quote-unquote God in the context of South Asian religions. How do you make the distinction?
Easily, because I say this, when you're a Christian in a place where it actually is challenging to be one, your faith is deeper. And I have referred this many a times. Sometimes to be a Christian in some parts of the world, that by itself is an act of courage, because you are putting on the line to the very extreme your life or your friendships and relationships, because you are swimming against the tide to be who you are or who you want to be. So I say being a Christian in my context is not like falling in love, it is growing in love. And you have different episodes in your life, because living in certain contexts throws, in my case, violence in your way to kind of experience God in the truest sense. And then you're able to distinct, the grass from the, the weed from the grass. Weed from the grass, and experience God in its truest sense.
I love that, not necessarily falling in love, but growing in love. And it really is a drawing a line in the sand decision to be a follower of Christ in that context. Now, as I understand it, your dad did something that was kind of countercultural at the time. He quit his job in film in order for your mom to pursue a career. Not that he stopped working, but tell us about that shift in context.
I think pretty much everything my dad and even mom have done has been radical, and that has allowed us as 3 of their children to also embrace the radical way of living. Both of them are feminists in a Christian sense. That's another show by itself. But when Dad, after I was born, 2 things struck his heart. One was, he had a very successful film career, but then he was like, I'm not doing enough in the ministry space. So he chose to quit at the peak of his career to be a stay-at-home father so that we don't have to come to a locked house. But he used his entire time writing Christian radio programs for the Christian Media Center. He's written about 8,000 plays, which has changed lives around the world till the funding stopped. But it was empowering for me as a daughter in the household to kind of see that this was possible.
I love that, because I was going to ask you next, how did that change your worldview, seeing your dad do that? And your mom and dad lived that out in the context of their marriage and love for each other, respect for each other's work. How did it change your worldview?
Radically again, because that allowed me to see or define the role of a woman or a daughter growing up without any definition, that I could be and I should be whatever God has created me to be. And that nobody could come in the way to kind of allow those gender definitions to break me from what God has called me to. So that has set new standards. Yeah.
And in setting those new standards, you have had this calling on your life to do social justice work.
Yeah.
You know, what was the catalyst for that? I mean, you've seen it modeled, you've seen this fearless living, this radical living in your mom and dad. What was the catalyst for you to tackle this giant called social justice in the world?
It started young when I was seeing violence outside of my house. So when you experience an incredible upbringing, when you see that, you know, marriages and families are not built on violence, and that is actually the exception to the norm that I was seeing outside, then you start to question, which is what I did. And I used street theater and street plays to kind of bring awareness when I was 15. But what actually brought me to the space of challenging the norm was my personal experience with violence. And I was like, this is not okay. So I needed to show up for those who needed someone to show up, because I did not experience that when violence was experienced by me.
Can you tell us a little bit, maybe just sort of on the surface, as to how those attacks affected you? Because I know you can't tackle social justice, perhaps even in the context that you were brought up in, without taking a couple of hits. You know, tackling the giant of social justice means that you're going to maybe have an X on your back.
Yeah.
Tell us about those attacks, and I know some of them were debilitating for a period of time.
Yeah, almost a year. I was paralyzed and absolutely living in fear. You know, seeking justice or seeking God comes at a cost. And some of us experience it, some of us don't. In the Western context, we may not oftentimes experience the price of seeking justice or seeking your faith even. But the price that I had to pay was basically getting beaten up by a few men in a city where not help reached. So a year of just staring at the ceiling almost, trying to come to terms with why this happened and what it is that I could do with my life if I could ever stand up and walk. So it's not an ending. Like even today I deal with the fear when I wake up in the morning. I say, is my leg working all right? I mean, is everything okay? So you live with a sense of urgency and things changes for you.
How did God walk you through that healing journey? Because I know you said it's a journey. You said you wake up even some days and say, wonder about whether or not your leg is functioning properly. How did God walk you through that healing journey? And perhaps through your story, how can you speak to someone perhaps that's dealing with their own immediate trauma or incident they've faced recently? Or they're dealing with fear, because you mentioned that fear gripped your heart for a period of time.
Joyfully. God met me with joy when I was, and this is where the concept of growing in love made absolute sense to me, because people oftentimes, so when was the moment that you truly became a Christian? Being born as in a Christian household does very little to your faith journey, even if you're surrounded by these conversations in your household. But experiencing these hard things allowed me to truly come to terms with what God was doing with my life and the calling that He put in my heart, because I was having an excellent corporate career before that, and it was on that bed that I realized that I needed to completely put an end to that and redirect my journey to where I could experience and see God in the people that we were leading out of slavery. So then, in my journey with International Justice Mission, I was seeing God every single day in the lives of these people. So when a person who's struggling with their day-to-day, I would say, there's also what Mahatma Gandhi quoted, look into the eyes of the poorest man, the person who does not have any of what you have, and then you will be able to lean into the blessings that you have received and decide what it is that you can do with your faith and everything that you have. So look at your hands, look at all that you have right now, and see how that can play into your life and in the lives of others. So when we stop obsessing over where we are in those dark days and realize where God has put us and where God is going to be meeting us, it's a lot more easier to walk that journey. And it might sound, rather haughty, but I'm saying this in all humility. When I stopped thinking about me and my journey and my pain, it became so much more beautiful to meet God and others.
What a challenge, Anu. Just what I keep hearing from you, just to paraphrase, is just it's a heart posture and giving back to God what he's entrusted to us. And sometimes that's even our hurt and our pain and what he can do with that. You returned from a beautiful visit home recently.
Yes.
Received as somewhat of a celebrity, I understand.
Embarrassing.
No, you shouldn't be embarrassed because you come from this rich heritage of godly leaders.
Yeah.
You know, like fathers and your father's dad and your grandfather on your mom's side.
Yeah.
Like, talk to us a little bit about that heritage.
Yes, I was overwhelmed when I went to this town. It was fascinating because I was kind of received like a celebrity. People were kind of thronging to come and say, "We need to see the granddaughter of James Canjanathoppil's granddaughter." I was like, "Why? I mean, why are you people so nice to me?" And then this happened because I was overwhelmed. I was like, "This is unreal. I don't know why people are being so nice and really desperate to come and have a conversation." So then this man was taking us in the car, and he stopped the car, and he was like, "Well, to know why we are like this to you, you need to know who your dad is. You need to know who your granddad is." And yes, he did set up the first church in that part of the town. He was one of the 4 from the Lutheran ministry who was trained. But that was also where I learned that my story did not start with me. It started with, this incredible legacy that my ancestors have left behind. He was almost stoned to death, but he continued to pursue what was the right thing that he needed to be pursuing at that point. That entire village at that point survived cholera because he pedaled 40 kilometers every single day to bring that homeopathic medicine to that village. There was only one person who died simply because he did not follow what the medication expected him to do. But that entire village came to Christ because of this single man's persistence. He hid the fact that he was from a caste, a higher caste, so that he would be welcome in a place where inequality was the norm. So I was humbled and also part ashamed with the kind of legacy that I'm carrying. I said, I'm not doing enough. This man put his life on the line.
Remarkable. And I know the impact, you couldn't possibly know the impact that the sacrifice that your grandfather, sacrifices that he made and other family members made, have had in the lives of those that are living around the world to this day. Having witnessed what you did, just in our last minute together, how does this rich legacy of faith that has been laid before you continue to work toward, how does that inform the way you want to live your life?
I think it's a relentless pursuit, and what I thought of when I got on that plane back after that trip was, this shouldn't stop. Not with me, not with my children, not with my grandchildren. In fact, it should be infectious enough to draw everyone else into this relentless pursuit of seeking justice and seeking God and inviting people into this space that is so beautiful.
Remarkable.
Thank you.
Anu, I've been hearing wonderful things about you for a long time now, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that we've had this opportunity to talk today and for our viewers to get to know you a little bit better. And of course, we're going to have you back in the future just to talk a little bit more extensively about what you're doing with International Justice Mission. Such important work, and I can't put it into words, but you certainly are one of the finest examples of people living the purpose-driven life. So God bless you for all that you're doing. May God continue to bless you and your family through every endeavor that you're a part of. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. The admiration is super mutual. So blessed to be here. Thank you.